I was just chilling petting my gray hairy thumper when he decided to challenge me to build and flip the most difficult combination of parts in the PC flipping history.
Yeah, baby!
Alright, now you're wondering what makes it so difficult to flip, and I have answers for you, my friends. So to start things off, we're using an Intel GPU, an Intel CPU, and an E-tier power supply. And finally, we're using an all-black, no RGB, wood-grain PC case. So I deliberately took it upon myself to complete this PC flipping challenge. Alright, ladies and gents, now let's go over our parts before we start building. The motherboard that we're using today is the MSI Pro B660 MA-SEC Wi-Fi DDR4. It doesn't have many bells and whistles, but it has Wi-Fi, USB-C, and some other stuff that no one really cares about. And the CPU that we're using today is the Intel i5-12400F. It has 6 cores, 12 threads, and up to 4.4 GHz. It's a pretty capable CPU for the price that you pay for it. Now let's go ahead and start building. Now the first thing that we need to do is put the CPU into the motherboard, so lift up the lever and take your cover off. Then grab your CPU and align it with the notches on the motherboard and the notches on the CPU and just slide it right on in there. Then take your cover and put it right over the CPU. Now grab that lever and start pushing it down. It'll require way more force than you anticipated. We're gonna put our RAM into the motherboard. We were using a TimeTech kit with 32 GB of DDR4, 3200 mega transfers, and we paid around $45 for it. Now open your RAM clips just like this. Then take one of your RAM sticks and slot it right on in. Then push it down until you hear a click. And just do the same with the second stick. Alright, perfect. Next we need to install our SSD. To install it, we first have to take off the motherboard heat shield. Just do it like I do. Next we need to install our SSD. We're using the Clevcraft C910 1TB Gen 4 drive. Now for the love of God, please peel off the sticker or your grandma's gonna explode.
I spend my pocket money on V-Bucks and Facebook.
Now put the SSD heat shield onto the SSD. Then take your SSD and put it into the M.2 slot on the motherboard. Just like this. Then press it down and put the motherboard heat shield back on. And then just start screwing. Alright, great. Now that we've got our board assembled, it's time to install the cooler. Now, since this is an Intel motherboard, we need to put the Intel backplate into the screw holes on the motherboard. So just do it as how I do it. Alright, great. Next up, take your standoffs. We're going to be using the gray one since this is for Intel, and just place them onto the cooler bracket just like this. Then take your cooler brackets and put them onto the back plate as follows. Now finally, take the knobs for the Intel brackets and screw them onto the Intel brackets, and then tighten them with a screwdriver to make them fully tight. Next, let's actually install our cooler. Now for this build, we're using the ID Cooling A410. It cools like a beast and it's only like $20. First up, peel the sticker or your newborn will be put into a blender.
I just put my newborn son into a blender.
Anyways, just peel it off. Then set the cooler aside. Now apply some thermal paste just like this. And put the cooler like you're smooshing your dog. Now just screw it on one side little by little until it's fully on. To be honest, you don't need anything but this unless you're building a 7800X 3D PC. And finally put on your fan onto the CPU heatsink. Now that we have our motherboard assembled, let's plug in a GPU to make sure it works, because there's nothing worse than plugging in all your components into the case and it doesn't work. Now the star of the show, the GPU that we're using today is the Intel Arc B580. I'm sure you've heard of it by now. It has 12 gigs of VRAM and a $250 MSRP. Now you can't find anything in stock for $250, so we bought this off of a scalper for $275.
What? Oh, hell no! That's hell no! Whoa!
Now to be honest, it's fine. You can't really get them under $300, so we did get a decent deal on the GPU. Now put it into the motherboard, and with one hand, of course. Next up, let's plug all our cables into the motherboard. First up is the 24 pin. Just slot it in until you hear a click. Alright, perfect. Next, plug in your CPU power. Same thing, just plug it in until you hear a click. We also need to plug in this extra 4 pin right here, so just do the same thing. And finally we have our GPU power. B580 only takes one 8-pin connector, so just shove it in there until you hear a click. Now turn on the power supply. Plug in your HDMI. And finally short the power switch with something metal. And we have life. Now look at that beautiful B580. Now at first we weren't getting a post, but then I reseated the CPU and now we got a post. So what do y'all think? I think the build looks great so far, even though it's not even in the case yet. Now it's time to put all the parts in the case. First things first, put the I/O shield into the back of the case just like this.
You suck!
Now take your motherboard and throw it into the case with no regard for human life. Now that we've got our motherboard into the case, screw it down so it doesn't fall over and explode. Next, we're going to plug in all our motherboard cables. First up, we have the case fans. Just find the 4 pins on the motherboard labeled system fans 1 and 2, and you should be ready to rock and roll. Then we have our USB-C cable. This plugs into the I-shaped port, and it should be on the bottom or right side of the motherboard. Now we have our USB 3.0 cable. This plugs in right here, and it's usually on the side or bottom of your board. Plug it in just like this until you hear a click. Alright, perfect. Now we've got our HD audio. It goes right here. It's usually on the bottom left of the motherboard. Align it with the pins and plug it in. Now finally we have our front panel pins. It usually goes power LED plus minus and then power switch and then some other cables. Click on your motherboard manual if you're confused about it or if you want the most accurate way to plug them in. And there we go, that's all our motherboard cables. Now let's install our power supply, and the power supply that we're using today is the Segotep GN650W. Now I know it's an E-tier power supply on the PSU tier list, but who really cares about that crap? It just hasn't been tested and I've used it plenty of times, so I trusted that it won't explode. Anyways, let's install it. Just shove it in the back with the fan facing down. And start screwing. Now is the perfect time to do some cable management. These are all the important cables, so just keep them out for now. And those are the not so important cables, so we just shove them into the power supply basement just like this. We're also going to be using a kit of black cable extensions from Okiness for $17. First up, plug the 24th pin until you hear a click. And then we have our CPU power, plug it in until you hear a click, and same with the other cables. Great, now that we've got our GPU installed, plug in your cable extension and screw down the GPU. Since we have all our cable extensions plugged in, let's plug in the power supply cables into the cable extensions. First up, we have the 24 pin. And then the CPU power. And finally, the GPU power. And now, I, as the best cable manager in the world, shall cable manage. But now here's the actual result. I think it looks pretty great. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to turn it on now. Now butter my bagel and toast me a slice of bread. She looks amazing with the wooden accents and the black case and the black GPU. Almost as beautiful as my girlfriend. And would you look at that, now we have a post.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money,
Dollar, dollar.
Alright, now before we get into this flip, if you watched my last video, you would know that we have failed to flip the previous PC. And well, we have finally sold it for $1,000 on Facebook Marketplace. This nice gentleman bought it for $1,000, which gave us a profit of $164, and here's the audio of the meetup. Hey, how you doing? I'm good. So, I've got some accessories here. We got the power cord, Wi-Fi antennas, cables, and stuff for the cooler if you ever want to switch it over to a different board. Front tiles right there. Whenever you plug in your monitor, plug it in down here and not up there.
Yeah, okay.
Just screw the Wi-Fi antennas right there. You can make it there. Make sure the power switch is always on.
Okay.
Alright. There you go. Alright. So I think the meetup went pretty great, and the guy has been enjoying his PC. Now sadly for the B580 PC, we have failed the challenge to build and flip the most difficult PC we've ever gotten. Now here are a few offers that we have gotten so far. So the first guy said he was interested in my PC, but he was also shopping around, and then he finally bailed out of buying my PC. The second guy offered me $400, like, get the hell out of here, buddy. This last guy offered me $700, but I declined. Now I will let y'all on an update in the next video. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe. Comment on what you want to see next. Also, I'm sorry for the terrible video quality. I didn't realize that I was recording in 1080p at 30 FPS when it could have been at 4K 60 FPS. So for the next video, will definitely be a lot better. Also, thanks for this one guy named Thatcher for making my banner and profile picture. That was very nice of him. Now get the hell out of here. Me and the rabbit love you.